I just want to welcome you all to Dan's funeral. I just have a couple of housekeeping things. So if you happen to be drinking, we'll have to keep it in this room, and then also we can drink in the, the man cave. You can tell I know everything about men. So the man cave. And so there's no drinking in the museum. So if you do have one of our reusable cups, just finish your drink in here, and then you can peruse the museum after we are done with this service. Yes, I think those are the only two housekeeping things I had. So I will begin. Isn't life crazy? 1 minute you're here, and the next minute you're playing dead for 100 of your best friends. I can't believe Dan is gone. I truly don't know how I will ever recover from losing the love of my life. Dan and I met during COVID, a time when both of us needed to heal. Not from a sickness of any sort, but from emotional baggage that we had been carrying throughout our lives. I loved Dan and loved Dan deeply. And I could tell that Dan loved me just as much. Dan helped me heal, he encouraged me, and he challenged me. I hope I was able to be an ounce of the partner that Dan was for me. I want to say a few things that I will miss about Dan. I'm going to miss his smile that beamed from ear to ear, and I will especially miss his laughter. He would quite literally laugh at all hours of the day. He even would laugh in his sleep. I am not joking. He woke me up in the middle of the night with his laughter because of a dream he was having. That is insane.
Damn.
I have never once laughed myself awake. But lo and behold, a couple months after being with Dan, I did laugh myself awake. That's crazy. But it taught me that Dan is joyful. He will do anything for a joke, even be crass, and that is lovely. So he taught me to be lighter, even in my dreams. I believe laughter, joy, and kindness were just a few of Dan's gifts to the world. No matter how absurd a statement was, Dan was going to be the one to say it. No matter how hard a task was going to be, Dan was going to do it for a friend or for a stranger. So my recommendation for you all is that in the spirit of Dan, be joyful, be absurd, be mischievous, and be kind. So, as you can tell, we are going to be eulogizing
Wow.
Dan. So we are now opening up the floor to anyone else who might have a prepared statement or a few remarks that they would like to make.
You owe me $20. Are you good for it?
Catch me later. Judy?
Hi. You did it. Yeah.
That was perfect.
I'm Judy Finkel, the long-suffering mother. Daniel Phelps Finkel was born 50 years ago today in Defiance, Ohio.
Oh, good place.
Interesting, eh? Mm-hmm. Because I was told because I told Bob before I married that I was unlikely to have or was unable to have children, he said, let's adopt. And so when we moved to Toledo, we applied to the Lucas County Children's Services shortly after we moved here in 1971. And one day I was lying in bed recovering from the flu. I got a call and it said, your baby's ready to be picked up. I said, please don't give him to anybody else. Give me a week to recover, which they did. I don't know if that was wise or not. On February 5th, 1995, during an incredible snowstorm, Bob and I drove down to the children's home in Maumee and picked up the most incredibly beautiful baby boy I had ever seen.
Aww. And he's still so cute.
And he's still, yes, he is adorable. When Dan got old enough to watch TV, he absolutely fell in love with Mr. Rogers. When Mr. Rogers would put on his shoes and sweater to leave, Dan would start crying, Rogers, Rogers! And I said, if you're going to cry every time he leaves, we're not going to let you watch him anymore. Okay, he said. And he stopped crying. He would entertain himself daily by pulling out all the pots and pans from underneath the cupboards and bang on them endlessly, just smiling from ear to ear. When he was old enough, I sent him off to Montessori school with Mrs. DiDio, and the house would be quiet until the pots and pans came back out again when he got home. When we moved to Brookside Road, he attended Ottawa Hills, starting with kindergarten. Then he met the Ottawa Hills gang. Brant Niggemeyer, Chris Thomas, Joe Rosenberg, T.J. Swigert, horses, snakes, turtles, BB guns, everything you could possibly imagine came into and out of that house with those boys. I got this card from one of my cousins that said, a baby boy, just think of all the joy he'll bring to your house, not to mention turtles and frogs, valuable rocks, bits of strings, water guns, stray dogs, we had that too, jelly beans, lightning bugs, pocket knives, bubble gum. Congratulations and best wishes to you all. Best wishes was right. We needed best wishes. But Dan, overall, I would say he was a joy to have. Looking back, he was a joy, yes. Just to give you an example, in high school, he was at the awards ceremony, or I was at the awards ceremony. His dad was working, I was there, and they were calling out the awards. The physics award goes to Daniel Finkel. Applause. No Dan. The chemistry award. Applause. No Dan. This award, that award. No Dan. Afterwards, I had to go up and collect all the awards because Dan had fallen asleep in the library. And here he is, asleep again. I'm going to turn you over to a sibling, maybe. Okay.
Hello everyone, I am Jessie, Dan's younger sister, but middle child. My speech is actually locked in the car, so I'm going to go off the top of my head here. First of all, I want to take a minute and thank every single person who showed up here today. You all have touched Dan in some way in his life, for the better or worse maybe, but my mom failed to mention that when we were younger, Dan was a little more than a handful. Emily and I got spanked for up with the hand. Dan got the belt or the wooden spoon. And then after he stabbed a girl in his class in second grade with scissors, that was the final straw, and he was off to Howe Military School. But Dan, in his persuasive conversations, convinced my parents that he would turn over a new leaf and be good. And so he did. So he didn't have to actually go off to military school, which I'm very thankful for because my brother is my biggest advocate. He has been there for me since day one. We actually just saw a picture of him and I when we were real little. I was probably 2, Dan was maybe 6 or so, if even that, and he's just looking at me as I was adopted too, like in the eyes, like, oh, I just love this kid, you know? So I feel like the love still has continued. He has been the best brother anyone could ask for. I know people always say that, but really, if you are here, you know how far Dan will go for anyone, or even a stranger. Every time I've had to move, he has showed up. You know who your real friends are when they show up to move. Jason Cole, I also have to give you a shout out because you were normally there too. But as far as his friends, yes, Dan had all sorts of reptiles, including a 6-foot-long corn snake. That snake was named Sebastian, and he liked to find his way into my bed that was a heated water bed. So when I would crawl in, I would find him at the bottom of my sheets or wake up with him tangled in my hair multiple times. There was not a time really that I could open a drawer and find like a dead tree frog or a turtle shell or whatever through the house. So yes, Dan, he also volunteered at the zoo. And I know when he had to go in to feed the alligators, he was scared shitless. He said his knees locked up and it was something to be remembered forever. So I remember him telling me that. Dan has at least he had his pilot's license, his pyrotechnics license. He was in martial arts. He's a financial advisor. He's volunteered at the prison to teach prisoners about their finances. He does the fireworks for different events like Mud Hens or the New Year. And he does a lot of volunteer work also, as you know, for the Old West End. He was King Wamba, but he also did a lot for the WGTE program, and he does Beg to the Bay every year for the MS causes, and he does a lot more. I'd take up the whole day if I could, and I just want to thank everyone again for being here. Some of you have known my brother longer than I have even, so they're also considered my brothers, and I think that my dad would have loved to be here, and here's something he would have said had he been. When Dan was also younger, they were at Wildwood, and they went into the manor house, and he was walking around, and Dan had stopped at the dictionary. So these ladies in their little, was it purple red hats or something? Like these little ladies came strolling through, and my dad said to my brother, "What are you looking at, Dan?" And he said, "I'm looking up the word terrorist." And Dad said, "Why are you looking up the word terrorist, Dan?" And he said, "Because I want to be one." So my dad also asked my brother, "Dan, do you like this new house on Brookside?" And Dan said, "Yes." He said, "Well, Dan, then you better think of a better career than being a terrorist, because you'll never be able to afford this house if you are." My mom would tell me he would want to run away, so he would pack his suitcase and go out the front door and sit on the front stoop for a little while and then turn around and come back in. I know that Joe and TJ and Chris and all them would go down to the creek and catch these animals if they weren't brought from the zoo. And one time Dan actually fell asleep in his nasty socks and had to go actually have his ankle drained because of the nasty water. So he was willing to risk everything for these animals to keep. And he's just was just an all-around great person. I can't say enough about him. I could be up here all day. But those are some of the memories I remember. I'm sure my sister has a few more, so I'll let her go next. But Dan will definitely be missed. And Justin, I thank you for being here for us through this whole year, and you've really been great to me, and you're definitely another brother. I've gained another brother, and I just want to say I love you very much, and thank you for helping him and us through other things that have happened, but mostly for being there for Dan and knowing he's okay with you by his side. Thank you, guys.
Sorry, I was a little long-winded, but I
I never really looked up to my older brother. The difference in our ages was 6 years. He was a bit of a troublemaker, and I was always a rule follower. But as I now reflect on his life and what I came to know about him, While I may not have looked up to him, I paid attention to what he did in life and learned from him. He made true friendships that have led to a lifelong group of support, not only for him, but for our entire family. He cared for animals, whether scaled or shelled, or brought home from a hunt and rescued from our cats. He nursed an abandoned kitten and gave her a home in his fraternity house. He adopted birds and taught them tricks, including, bang, you're dead. To say he had diverse interests would be a gross understatement. He was a master scuba diver, a pilot, a third-degree black belt in Aikido, an AV theater guru, a licensed pyrotechnician, and a king, just to name a few. When he found his home in the Old West End, he found another group of true friends, another family. It's hard to describe him as a loving person because he never showed those feelings. But as I paid attention, I saw those emotions were what he kept closest to his heart, expressed outwardly only as steadfast commitments to those he loved the most. It's humbling to be here today with the friends he chose and the family he created in his life. Being here on this somber day, it's comforting to know his memory will live on in so many of the lives he's touched. Thank you for joining us.
As you can see, this is hard for everybody. So now we're opening up the floor to friends who have either prepared remarks or something they would like to say.
I moved to Old West End in April of 22, and Dan was one of my first friends. We met at a neighborhood meeting, and I was trying to learn how to do pockets, biscuit joining. And so I innocently stood up and said, does anybody know how to biscuit join, can teach me? And there was really no response, but then all of a sudden he turned around in his chair and he goes, I've got one, talk to me after the meeting. So I did. So he says, yeah, come on over and get it, you can borrow it. Now, I'm new to the neighborhood, he didn't know me, but I guess it was just good vibes, he knew he could trust me. He loans me this brand new biscuit joiner. He goes, I don't know how to use it, so when you learn, you can teach me. And that was the beginning of our friendship, and I feel like we're family now. And Justin and Mira, dear Mira, and Justin, you've turned him into a dog lover. Anyway, I mourn the loss of my dear friend and family member.
Uh-oh.
It's not going to be that bad. Good evening. Some of you already know who I am. For those that don't, my name's TJ Swigert. I've known Dan for a very long time, over 40 years. And he asked if anything had ever happened to him, if I would be so kind as to say a few words at his funeral. So I'll do my best. A few words. I thought he would get a kick out of that. I'd like to begin my eulogy by reading from one of Dan's favorite books, the Holy Bible. Numbers 22:28. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth and said to Balaam, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? And Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. The donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? No, he said. And this seems inappropriate, so we'll try another one. Matthew 5:4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And I take solace in that. But Dan means a lot to me, meant a lot to me. And like I said, I knew him for over 40 years. One of my closest and dearest friends. And what more can be said about Dan than what his sisters and mother have already said? So much of his accomplishments, I can skip a lot of those. He had a lot of them. He was honest to a fault. You always knew where you stood with Dan. I spent a lot of time in his house as a child, and he was big on his family. He loved you very, very much. I can look back on fond memories of growing up with Judy and Bob and Jessica and Emily. My condolences are to you, ladies. Wow. So again, we could talk about all his accomplishments, being the black belt in Aikido, pilot, ordained minister, by the way.
That's right.
Accomplished equestrian. More recently, and this is probably speaking to more of his Old West End friends, he loved working on his houses and all the people in those neighborhoods. And I know a lot of you come from those neighborhoods, and I've met a lot of you because of that. And those houses are beautiful because of him. And he really took pride in all that. So we can talk about Dan's charming nature. People gravitated towards him. Obviously, look around you. And over the years, he enjoyed the company of many, many friends like yourselves. We should be so lucky to have one person in our lives like Dan. He loved animals, his own and everyone else's.
Yep.
Dog may be man's best friend, but Dan was my dog's best friend. Yes, he was fun and caring and generous, and although sometimes cheap, he was never greedy. It would be just like him to throw a big party for his funeral with an open bar. It is an open bar, right? Truly, his was a blessed life, and I don't think I've met anybody that didn't like or care for Dan Finkel. Lucky guy. And now he's dead. And so I'll end on another verse from the good book, Joshua 13:1. And the Lord said, now Joshua was old, advanced in years, and the Lord said to him, you're old, advanced in years. And that's saying something. You know you're aging if even God thinks you're old. Anyways, Dan, love you, you prick, wherever you are. I will miss you.
That's fun.
She lost her king.
Aw.
They've prepared some words. As this is truly an honor to speak on behalf of Dan, I'm going to give my remarks in the present tense, as I believe that each and every one of us, when we touch each other's lives, are together forever in this life and the thereafter, and whatever lives come before, beyond, and in front of us. Dan, one of the best things about you is the way you make moments matter. When we were nominated King and Queen of the Old West End Festival, I learned something very important about you. You take a crown seriously, only in the sense that you use it to make other people feel really special. You are actually quite humble. I call Dan my humble king. We shared some very special moments, and you made our experience together lighthearted and unforgettable. In a moment when we were together presenting to a crowd of people, I held his hand and I said, I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now.
as my children look upon us, and I don't want to be a spectacle to my children. I want this moment to be sincere. And he said, let it be. Let it be. It is what it is in this moment. And we shared together later how that moment was both what felt like a dismissal of my experience, but also a moment of grace and an opportunity to be grateful in the moment, and something that I really needed. And he was able to provide that for me. And we shared our experiences of that moment later. And that's kind of Dan's superpower. He brings joy without trying too hard, makes people feel included, special, and turns ordinary moments into stories that people keep telling year after year, forever. Tonight, Dan gets to hear what most people only learn later, that he is deeply loved, that he matters, and that his presence has left a mark. And we're better for knowing him. I am better for knowing Dan. You bring light with you wherever you go, and whether you know it or not. And trust me, because I know, because I am someone who does that. And I acknowledge that and embrace it to the fullest. You make people feel included and seen, whether it's something big or something small, and that is not by accident. It is who you are. You should know that the stories people are telling tonight aren't just memories, they're proof that you've lived a life that touched people deeply, and that touch is still happening. I am grateful for you, Dan, forever my king. I'm so grateful for your laugh, your confidence, your generosity, and the way you show up fully as yourself. I am immensely, immensely proud to have shared parts of our lives together. Tonight isn't about loss, it's about love. And Dan, you are so very, very, very loved.
I believe Nick Melinda has a few things to say.
A lot of people said a lot of beautiful things tonight, and I'm so glad you're all here to witness this for Dan. It's too far away. Is it making a weird noise?
No, it's 7 o'clock.
You're done.
I didn't print out what I wrote, but I'm gonna read it. We're all gathered here today to honor Dan Finkel, a man who decided the best way to celebrate turning 50 was to hold a fake memorial service. That tells you almost every single thing you need to know about Dan. Dan has lived a life filled with curiosity, commitment, and an impressive number of safety waivers. Whatever Dan does, he does fully. Flying planes, shooting fireworks, earning black belts, running theater tech, supporting his community. Dan is the kind of person who says yes when others hesitate, who shows up when it would be easier not to, who takes responsibility sometimes before anyone ever asks. Yes, Dan can be sarcastic, and yes, he can be very confident in being right.
Yes.
But underneath those traits is a deeply kind, loyal, and principled person. Dan cares about people, about places, about legacy, and about things done well. He has quietly held together theaters, boards, events, and friendships for decades, as you guys have seen a testament to tonight. And many of us here are better for it. So today isn't about loss, it's about gratitude. 50 years of service, 50 years of impact, 50 years of making life more interesting and fun for the rest of us. So let the record show Daniel Finkel lived a full life and made a lasting impact and survived his own memorial service. Honestly, that feels exactly on brand. Happy 50th, Dan.
Get out the magic wand.
I didn't do this myself. Mary was my partner. Here lies a man named Dan, who, as many know, was a fan of deep-fried testicles. He even went to festivals that sometimes would land him in the can. And then there is Daniel, who rode only half of an annual Bite to the Bay. He didn't dare stay because he felt they were not being factual. And dare we mention his hockey obsession, for which he makes no exception. He attends the games not to watch the dames, but to release his hidden aggression. Before his demise, he accomplished feats that many would prize, including raising the dough for what is a great show known as the Magic of the Old West End.
Yeah.
And to conclude, this memorable man, known as Dan, will live in our hearts as an outstanding part of an overall plan to free our hands to clamp as we stand and honor the man Dan.
Hey, Justin, if we say his name 3 times, will he rise from the casket?
I don't think so. So, thank you all once again for coming out. This is a last call for any last-minute statements. If not, we will finally put Dan to rest. What?
Dan, arise.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dan Finkel, I'm very honored to know you, and I hope that we can go to another Here Come the Mummy show together very soon. And I can't wait to karaoke with you again. And I'm very glad to be able to call you a friend. Thank you so much. Happy 50th birthday, guys.
So now, in the true spirit of Dan, he's been laid to rest, and we will now drink to forget.
To Dan!
Please finish your drinks in this room, then you may enter the museum and peruse all of the collection, and then we will make our way to the man cave where there is food and more beverages. So thank you all.
Hey, Dan, you've got bedhead.
And also, if you didn't want to share a remark publicly,